PETA, podcast every day in April, where during the month of April you'll hear about different topics and different stories and discussions that I have on my mind and on my heart to discuss and address for this month. It may be sports related, it may be stuff related. You may even hear some guests on the show that you may haven't even seen or heard from me addressing on the show. But this is PETA, and this is Podcast Every Day in April. Hope you enjoy. Episode 159 of The Pass is here. Back with yet another episode. I'm your host, BT. Gonna jump right into it. Got a lot of topics to get into. Didn't realize we're continuing the podcast every day in April. So much is going on. So much is going on. I want to make sure that I get as many of the topics as possible because, we're going to get all the topics, obviously. But I want to be sure that I don't, as a nice saying goes, leave anything behind because we really had a very busy week with college basketball. There were 2 crowns given out for the men's and women's basketball. There was a very tragic story that happened. Luckily, there's good news from it, so we'll get into that. An artist spotlight will be a little different, kind of some indie 2%, kind of under the radar artists. So we'll get into all of that. Podcasts are uploaded each week using Spreaker.com. If you're looking to get into podcasting to get started, I would definitely recommend Spreaker. It's kind of been my go-to for the past 2 years. And also, if you're looking to post any podcast or record for recording purposes, I found that the Blue Yeti works for me. I was talking to someone, Audio Technica 2020 is a good microphone too if you're starting out, just kind of getting like a basic feel of just if you're strictly on a recording basis. Before I get into that, because I always share, and I want to also mention the intro and the outro that you are hearing. I will be using the April, or you have heard the April intro, so that will be strictly for April. Once the weekly shows come back, we'll go back to our regular introductions and outros. But that is the sound. The songs that you're hearing are thanks to Grimecraft. Definitely want to give him a big shout out. Trying to think of any other house duties I need to get into before we run into the show. Also, if you're looking at designing or working on web pages, I found the easiest way to do it is you kind of got to use the businesses accordingly. And I know that's kind of a crazy way of putting it, but it's the truth. And that is you use one site strictly for your domain. So find a domain that's pretty inexpensive. And then as far as your upkeep and maintenance of the site, if you don't want to pay the money directly to that company, you can do a host site. I use DreamHost. I've been with DreamHost now for about a year, and I haven't had any complaints or any conflicts. I pretty much use DreamHost strictly for the service, and then I mainly upload and manage my site through WordPress. So that's kind of how the page is brought together. I will likely, and I don't have anything listed for that as of yet, but I will kind of go into my, I guess you could say, a day in the life of my podcast and how I get set up and get started. Should be prepared, but it's odd because I'm actually running cold turkey today. Normally I'd have a bottle of water, but I digress. We're going to just run right into the show, and hopefully I won't have too many slip-ups or hiccups. So the story is we always do on our weekly shows. I don't want to do this during the daily shows for the everyday podcast, but I will be doing this still with the weekly episodes. Since this is episode 159, we'll go ahead and give the meaning of the number 159 in reference to it being an angel number. So angel number 159 comprises of numbers 1, 5, and 9. Number 1 represents the start of something exciting and new. It signifies the beginning of a new chapter for you. You are about to experience the most exciting part of your life, self-discovery that will lead you to self-actualization. If you listen to what your angels are saying, you will learn more about your journey. Enjoy the new experiences and learn important karmic lessons. Qualities like instinct, intuition, and initiative will keep your heart guarded from negative influence. Angel number 5, symbolism deals with your freedom of thought, feeling, and emotions. You are reminded to have the spontaneity and curiosity of a child. Learn to take life as an adventure and enjoy every moment of it. These personality traits will help you learn to adapt to the changes that are likely to happen in your life. These changes will happen sooner than expected, and if you are not ready, your life will be upset by the upheavals. Number 9 is the last number in any series. It denotes conclusions and endings. It signifies the parts of your life that are about to end so that you can receive enlightenment and grow towards your destiny. The number 159 meaning signifies end of certain phases in your life and the opening of new doors to new experiences. These experiences will lead you to your desired destiny. You will have to be willing to let parts of your old life go so that you can embrace your new experiences. Finally, if you have a pet, take time to connect with it. You possess a strong bond with animals that will show you the simplicity of life and how it should be. So I like sharing these, and I always have fun doing this because it's something that makes me understand, like, there's something that's ending. But like in this, me interpreting that and reading kind of just the overall view, it mainly presents it as there's something that's about to end leading into something that's beginning. And you have to be willing to accept that vulnerability or acceptance of change. I've talked about this on podcasts numerous times. One of our biggest challenges as people in general is that we sometimes find ourselves battling with change or battling with adjustments because we look at it as, if I've been doing this thing this way for this long, why break this chain or break this pattern? When in reality, sometimes breaking that pattern or breaking that chain could be leading you into a better place, or even better, or even more so, a better headspace. So just take time and look into that and understand, like, it's not to be taken lightly. By nature, we do take things like that lightly, but we really shouldn't. And that's just kind of my personal outtake or message that I received from that angel number presentation. So yesterday, as I mentioned, we're doing a podcast every day in April. I will go ahead and let you all know, because I realized this when I looked at my podcast every day in April and every day in August, that it's not the amount of days that I've done for recording. But then I realized, well, Brian, you did record some shows that were in weekly episodes, so they're not going to be weekly and paid podcasts every day in April or August. So if you notice that, if you look at the podcast every day in April or the podcast every day in August, either on pastpodcast.com or if you look at it on Spreaker.com, when you look at the group playlist, you'll see that there will be a number sequence, and then you'll see a number skipped. So the number that skipped means that it's leading, that means that show will likely have been a weekly episode. Now there's a possibility, and I won't be surprised if there are some twin talks that will come in there. So you may not even see it under podcast every day in August or April, or under weekly episodes. So I just want to make sure, give everyone an awareness of that, and just present that before I continue any further. So yesterday on episode 158, we did talk about autism, and yesterday being Autism Awareness Day, as well as the month of April being acknowledged as Autism Awareness Month. So I gave a little bit of information about autism, and I really kind of dangled you all on really what autism entails, because I'm kind of like the newbie to autism. There's a friend of mine who I follow on Instagram. Her Instagram handle is Lexi_FM. I'm going to make sure I put her link in the podcast show notes, because she kind of has been posting for the past, she posted one on Sunday and on yesterday. So she'll be posting one each day, I'm assuming, about different celebrities or individuals who have autism, and it's like a daily functioning form of autism. So I'm going to read the article I have regarding this, and then we'll kind of just chop it up and roll into more topics. So this will kind of be a mixture of stuff, but still, our normal routine will be sports and stuff in that order. So defining autism, autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, and autism are both general terms for a group of complex disorders of brain development. These disorders are characterized in varying degrees by difficulties in social interaction, verbal and nonverbal communication, and repetitive behaviors. Autism appears to have its roots in very early brain development. However, the most obvious signs of autism and symptoms of autism tend to emerge between 2 and 3 years of age. Both children and adults with autism typically show difficulties in verbal and nonverbal communication, social interactions, and leisure or play activities. Autism spectrum disorder has specific diagnostic criteria outlined in the American Psychiatric Association Diagnostics and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, which is in short DSM-TV-TR. Based on those who are affected, ASD occurs in all racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic groups, but are almost 5 times more common among boys than among girls. CDC estimates that about 1 in 8 children, and it's from 2014, has been identified with an autism spectrum disorder. There are 3 different types of ASD or autism spectrum disorders. One is autistic disorder, which is called the classic autism. This is what most people think of when hearing the word autism. People with autistic disorder usually have significant language delays, social and communication challenges, and unusual behaviors and interests. Many people with autistic disorder also have intellectual disability. Then there's Asperger syndrome. People with Asperger syndrome usually have some milder symptoms of autistic disorder. They might have social challenges and unusual behaviors and interests. However, they typically do not have problems with language or intellectual disability. Pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified, which is PDD-NOS, or also called atypical autism. People who meet some of the criteria for autistic disorder or Asperger's syndrome, but not all, may be diagnosed with PDD-NOS. People with PDD-NOS usually have fewer and milder symptoms than those with autistic disorder. The symptoms might cause only social and communication challenges. Not too much. ASDs, as far as signs and symptoms, ASDs begin before the age of 3 and last throughout a person's life. Although symptoms may improve over time, some children with an ASD show hints of future problems within the first few months of life. In others, symptoms might not show up until 24 months or later. Some children with an ASD seem to develop normally until around 18 to 24 months of age, and then they stop gaining new skills or they lose the skills they once had. A person with ASD might not respond to their name by 12 months, not point at objects or show interest, point at an airplane flying over by 14 months, not play pretend games by 18 months, avoid eye contact and want to be alone, have trouble understanding other people's feelings or talking about their own feelings, have delayed speech and language skills, repeat words or phrases over and over, which is called echolalia, give unrelated answers to questions, get upset by minor changes, have obsessive interests, flap their heads, rock their body or spin in circles, have unusual reactions to the things around, have unusual reactions to the way things sound, smell, taste, look, or feel. And then it's just a couple more pieces of information regarding the prevalence of autism and the causes and risk factors. So I just wanted to share that because I did, like I said, yesterday, I kind of scoured over autism and didn't really break down autism from like a full standpoint. Just kind of looked at, today's Autism Awareness Day, and that was it. But these are the different types of autism. So if you see any of these signs or these symptoms and you meet someone and they could possibly have autism, you can address it, but just know how to address it without making it like a known issue of any sort. And as I said, it is the biggest impact behind it is the comfort and or discomfort of being around, mainly through language delay, communication challenges, and just social environments as a whole. And you can have the form of it, but not be fully autistic, if that's a good way to put it. So I wanted to share that. Like I said, if you do want to read the article more in depth and do more research, the link that I provided does give very helpful resources and worthwhile information. Now, that's through Autism Supportive West Shore. That's in Michigan. So I always remember to remind you all and make sure to share each week. If you are in a crisis or in a verbal or physical situation, do contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE or 1-800-799-7233, or you can go to www.thehotline.org. Now, one thing I want to add, and I'm not going to say I'm bouncing around a little bit, but I'm kind of organizing my disorganization with this week's podcast. If you are in a situation, and I'm going to go ahead and address this now because I don't have a tab for it, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. If you do or have experienced domestic violence, the signs are going to be there whether you acknowledge them or not. And this is from a personal standpoint, from a friendly standpoint, or from just a general standpoint. Sorry, I'm like moving a lot of places. I'm just trying to find something, and I'm probably not going to find it, but of course I did. Okay. So last week, and the story has kind of come a little bit more full circle, involving Fabulous. First and foremost, I'm not going to go into an in-depth discussion about it, only because we know what's being charged. I'm being introduced to this personally. There's a difference based on the charges versus what you're convicted for. And that's where your sentencing and your process and all that comes into play. It's a tough situation to see pan out the way it did, but it's even tougher because we don't know the full extent of what happened. The only tough part about it is it was just not the best timing, and it wasn't the best public eye. It was an eyesore as far as through the public eye, and that's kind of the best way I can put it. It's not me, and I'm saying this because it's and I've listened to this on someone else's podcast, and I'm going to say it as well. It's not the fact of dancing around addressing the topic, but it's more so you want to be sure you're saying what's beneficial to say without something possibly being used in hindsight of the case or the situation. And I'll just leave it at that. So, as I share each week, if you feel or you think that there's a possibility that your life or someone else's life around you is in danger, call for help, get assistance. Don't just brush it off like it's not a big deal. By brushing it off like it's not a big deal is what generates two situations becoming much bigger than what they are. And by that point, it turns into a whirlwind and it's out of control by then. So that's just something to think about and look at. I always like to share with you all each week if you are looking to get food. And I'm going to share this and state this now so I can be clear and transparent. The businesses that I promote are not sponsors of the podcast. These are just individuals who I'm all about networking and getting their brand out there to the masses. And mainly, if you're looking to get business in what they do, you're welcome to check them out, at your convenience. So A Taste of Heaven RVA, I have been rocking with my sis for a minute. And I want to make sure it's A Taste of Heaven RVA located at 10101 Brook Road, and that's in Glen Allen, Virginia, 23059. Or if you're in the Virginia Center Commons Mall, it'll be located there. Phone number is 804-266-2509. If you want to go there and get some good soul food, they'll get you right. Their Jamaican plug, as I call her, Charlene Saunders. I actually talked with her when I was employed at one point, and she was able to kind of have a discussion with me about that work routine, and we kind of networked through that. So if you are looking to go there and get food, you can call in and place orders. I do provide the links for as far as the order process and getting that set up. It can be done through Square, and it can also be done. She is affiliated with Uber Eats as well for her business. And also, if you're in the local area and you're looking to get some cleaning work done, I have a friend who is a cleaning specialist. Her name is Sherry Winston. The name of her business is Peachy Clean RVA LLC, and that is Peachy Peachie. I make sure I do spell that because that is how it's spelled. I do have her Facebook link shared. She does residential and commercial cleaning. If you want to give her a call regarding getting business, it's 804-726-0366. We're running into that spring cleaning time of the year, so if you're really looking to get some cleaning done, definitely a go-to choice. And then you have peachycleanrva@gmail.com if you'd like to reach out to her by email. And And again, that's PEACHIE cleanrva@gmail.com. And finally, I have a friend who's in Illinois. If you're looking to get your bartending life right, you want to get some drinks, some mixology work done, even if you're looking to get cupcakes, pops, cake pops, or mini desserts, Jaleesa Wilkins is the go-to person. Number is 630-866-6557. She has 2 separate emails. I want to make sure I share them separately for the bartender or the mixology work. If you're looking to get anything from her in that regard, it is mixologist.jw@gmail.com. And for Munchkin Sweets, it is Munchkins Dessert, DESSERT @gmail.com. Check her out. Tell them that Brite82 or Past Podcast sent you. So I've gotten all of that out of the way and haven't fallen out. So we're doing pretty good so far. Now we'll get into the fun stuff, because if you, as I always like to state, not necessarily if you were under a rock or if you missed out on life, just a lot of things have happened sports wise. We're running into the wind down of the NBA. We're going to get into that. First things first, though, we're going to go ahead and talk about college basketball, and it kind of worked out with good timing. We did have our Final Four teams not chosen, but they did play their games from last week. And then that led into our Final Four matchups that we had, which was Loyola Chicago versus Michigan and Villanova against Kansas. So I'm going to break down these games as best as I can and then kind of go into the championship game and just kind of call it for what it is. Loyola Chicago and Michigan pretty much had that game from the beginning. Loyola Chicago was a great Cinderella story. There really wasn't a solid, concrete result of what we would see from them. Michigan was just too big, first and foremost. And then Michigan played Michigan basketball against Loyola Chicago, which got them into the championship game. They ended up winning 69-57. And then on the opposite side, Villanova played against Kansas. Now, with the 4 teams being where they were, the winner of this game was likely going to be your champion. Hands down, nothing taken away from the other 2 teams. But Villanova proved that they had depth as far as their bench and their role players. Kansas has a good team. Kansas just really didn't have much of an answer for what Villanova was bringing as far as their inside and outside presence for the game. They won 95-79. It was kind of a watch from the beginning. And in the championship game on yesterday, Michigan played against Michigan played against Villanova. I was ready to say Michigan played against Michigan. Michigan played against Villanova. Villanova won by 17. I watched bits and pieces of the game, not gonna lie, but for the most part, Villanova kind of just came out guns blazing, and it had its points where it was close. Michigan had the bigger presence. Shots weren't falling here and there, and then they had a guy come off the bench for Villanova who made a big impact, and he made his as with any game, he made his presence known on the court, and he kind of was like the go-to guy. They gave him a lot of grief. I don't have the information because I don't like sharing stories like this, but I'll address it anyway. He did have a lot of Twitter conversations here and there that got him a lot of attention, and then he randomly deactivated his Twitter because someone went back to a tweet that he posted where he used the reference that he plays like his N-word, Derrick Rose, or something of that sort. Or shout out to his N-word, Derrick Rose, and I'm not going to use that term because I'm not a big fan of using it. But it was used and it was said, and of course, once that tweet was found, it led to his page then being deactivated. Jay Wright was the coach for Villanova. This was actually his second championship in the past 3 years. Last year, North Carolina won, and before that, it was. And if you look at it, the past couple of years, you kind of had it's been kind of like a smooth run of Roy Williams, Coach K, and Jay Wright. Jay Wright if you think about it, Jay Wright has always had a team capable of making it to the Final Four. And either one or two things would happen. They would get knocked off very early, or they would never make the championship game. And even if they did, they really weren't. They kind of had a no-show. So in this case, it was a surprise because they were able to knock off one of the top teams in Kansas, as well as knocking off Michigan. So I mean, there was a conversation brought up, and I looked at this video on YouTube as well. As far as, is Jay Wright one of the best coaches right now, or is he considered to be the best coach right now? I sometimes, and I'm gonna be transparent with talking about this because I feel like it should be said, because it's one of those things where by nature you want to be fair, but you also want to be honest as a listener and as being a knowledge base about a game. Max Kellerman tries, and that's all I'm gonna say. He tries. On First Take, he's put in very unique situations to talk about various teams and sports and events, and it's the job. You have to do it. I'm not gonna downplay that portion of it at all. Not fair to him, not fair to the game. They asked him if Jay Wright was if he's the best coach in college basketball. He outright blatantly said yes, and they're factoring in based on active coaches. I could almost make a case in saying that Bill Self is a better coach, but the tough part is, in sports, we factor in two things: who's winning right now, and who's hitting the hot trend or hot wave. Jay Wright is on the hot wave, yes, but in basketball and college basketball right now, you can't ignore Coach K or ignore Roy Williams and what they're doing with their programs. Like, if you look at basketball right now, in college basketball, period, when it comes to men's basketball, you get, yes, one and dones are going to happen. There's no ignoring or denying that. But in most situations, your solid 3-year, 4-year players, Duke, Kansas, Michigan State, Villanova, those schools that I just named, I'm making sure I said Duke and North Carolina. Like, those schools, among other schools, are the schools that usually are near, if not in the Final Four. Syracuse always comes up as a name. Like, they get, you've heard and seen one and dones. Obviously, we know about Carmelo, but there are a lot of players who actually go to full course and play 4 years. And it's not even on the basis, the gift and the curse of the 4-year run in sports is, in college basketball, is if you play for 4 years, you get your credibility on the college level, on a collegiate level. When you're looking at the NBA and possibly trying to get drafted, teams don't want a player that's 4 years. They look at you as, and this is my personal assessment. I'm not saying this as I've talked to sources and people. No, this is just my personal way of looking at it. There are, when you're looking at drafting a kid out of college or drafting a kid to go to the NBA, youth is going to outweigh experience. Exceptions who happen with that, Tim Duncan, that's the quickest one I can think of offhand, but I'm trying to think of, is Eric Dam. There are a couple of names that are like either big men or just players in general who, if they had those extra years in college basketball, it did pay off. Draymond Green, Steph Curry. You get those once in a while scenarios involving that. But in the NBA's like code book or requiem or requirements regarding players being, going to the NBA, let me get somebody that's going to play a year. He's 18, maybe 19. Let me develop him. See if he's developable, which is not a word. I'm making that up. If he has the willingness to be developed, will he stay on my team, or do I see him going to the G League? Is he going to go overseas? Because a lot of guys, if you really look at it in basketball as a whole, they play and they get that rookie contract, and they may make some noise. They may become what you call or hear about as a two-way player, where they play in the G League, but they'll come back up to the NBA and play games here and there, or they go through the 10-day contract phase. Weber that played for VCU, he's a good point guard, but the NBA didn't appreciate a value. What affected him was his injuries, as far as coming into the NBA, as well as him not being a younger guard. Like if you look at it right now, you think of De'Aaron Fox coming in now, Trae Young. I feel like I want to say Miles Bridges did declare. Bam Adebayo. What's my man? Marvin Bagley, Michael Porter, Harry Giles, which I still feel is a huge risk for Sacramento, but the draft was made, the trade was made. He's in the NBA. He hasn't played a game yet, but they look at it as he's young. If we get him heal up and play, he'll come back out and play. Lonzo Ball, LiAngelo Ball. I'm naming guys just to point out youth is credited more than experience. And I went into that whole tangent just to present it as the schools that normally are in the Final Four: Duke, North Carolina, Michigan State, Villanova. Villanova gets 3-year, 4-year guys. You don't hear about them very often because when they go to the NBA, they become role players, but they become legitimate role players and they benefit and help a team get over the hump. And we just don't hear about it that often because they're not the top tier players. So I just wanted to share that and talk about that as far as like the Jay Wright, best coach, where does he fit in? He's in the top 5 by far. I think him winning is going to benefit. It's just going to be interesting because I think if he wins another championship, he's going to the NBA. Not going to be the best thing because sometimes recruiting in college basketball versus being an NBA coach, in the NBA you don't recruit. You have a bunch of guys and you got to coach them into your style of play, which can either be exceptionally well or horrendously wrong, as I always say. So we flip it from men's basketball, and I feel bad because I always mention this, but I'm going to go into it because it's the truth. Women's basketball does not get a lot of credit, and that's going to change. I'm going to work on this more because there are WNBA games that will be coming up in a few months. I'm going to implement that into the podcast because women play basketball just like men do. And their games, yeah, you may not get the ravishing oohs and ahs that everyone, quote unquote, is expecting, but you still get good basketball. And that's pretty much what anybody wants at the end of the day. So that being the case, so they played, I'm going to make sure I get this right. It was Sunday and that would have been Friday. So on Friday night, Notre Dame's women's basketball team played against UConn. Now, UConn was undefeated during the regular season, and they were undefeated going into obviously they hadn't lost a game in the tournament yet. They played against Notre Dame. Notre Dame had a buzzer beater to beat them to get to the championship game. They had already, and let me make sure I'm telling this story because I don't want to skip it. Because they had already played South Carolina, and South Carolina had won the championship last year, and UConn girls pretty much just dominated South Carolina with no problem. UConn just made that look like it was nothing. So then we fast forward to now, where Notre Dame plays against Mississippi State in the championship game. Mississippi State we didn't expect, but hey, the bracket runs the way it does, and here we are. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of share this video from the closing seconds of the game, and you'll just kind of just prepare for amazement. All right, so to paint a very brief timeline, there was 3 seconds on the clock. Score was tied 58 apiece, and the junior guard Arike Agumbwale hit a 3 for Notre Dame. Bam, championship game 1. That's it. It was I think it was 0.1 second left on the clock after that shot, and Mississippi State wasn't really able to get a play off after that point. So to mainly give the story, to address the story of what happened, she sank a three. It was a shot of a lifetime for junior guard Arike Agumbuale. Nailed it for Notre Dame. She sank a three-pointer from the corner with 0.1 seconds left on the clock, beating Mississippi State 61-58 and giving Notre Dame its second women's basketball title Sunday night in Columbus, Ohio. Notre Dame scored its first title 17 years ago, also on April the 1st. We just kept fighting, and thank you, Jesus, on Easter Sunday, Notre Dame coach Muffet McGraw told New York Times. Ogunbowale was named the most outstanding player in the come-from-behind victory. She scored 16 of her 18 points in the second half. Mississippi State dominated much of the game in the second quarter. The Irish only had 3 points, setting an NCAA tournament record for the fewest points in a period. Now, before I continue, because I want to make sure that I address this, because I don't know if anyone is aware, women's college basketball is implementing something that I hope men's college basketball may do. They did it in the NIT. I feel like it may come to college basketball soon, and that is for 4 quarters. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's 4 10-minute quarters. So it still comes out to 40 minutes regardless. In the third quarter, Notre Dame was down 15 points, and with less than 2 minutes in the game, they were down by 5. Tied as the clock ran down, the Associated Press reports, Mississippi star Tierra McCowan missed a layup with 27.8 seconds, and both teams turned the ball over in a wild sequence. McCowan fouled out of the game, stopping an Irish fast break after consecutive turnovers, and that set up the final 3 seconds. After Ogunbowale's last clutch shot, the officials huddled and put 1/10 of a second on the clock. A couple of Mississippi State players had already headed for the locker room, while Notre Dame players celebrated. The court was cleared, and Mississippi State tossed a futile inbounds pass into the lane as the buzzer sounded. It was the second straight game that Ogunbowale hit a shot in the final second to carry the Irish. On Friday, her jumper with 1 second remaining in overtime knocked off previously unbeaten UConn in the semifinals. Notre Dame had lost the title game 4 times over the last 7 years. It nearly ended the same way for the Irish had they not had the biggest comeback in the final since the women's tournament began in 1982. And let's see. So they did share, and they gave us, I guess it was a edit in the article, so I want to make sure I correct this. A previous version of the story incorrectly stated that Notre Dame won its first title on Easter Day in 2001. In fact, it won the title on April the 1st, 2001. But Easter fell on April the 15th that year. So it was still ironic that it was on April the 1st that they won that game. So that was what they were presenting as far as the 17-year drought. But major props to Notre Dame, especially that long of a drought to not win a championship. The UConn, like I said, UConn played as good of a game as they could play. UConn has always brought good teams to the championship. They just ran into a good Notre Dame team, and it just was the way the ball bounced. So we have that story, and that's kind of how Notre Dame was able to get their first crown in 17 years. And it's actually their second championship ever. Now, that then generates the question, do we make their coach, let me make sure I get her name, Muffet McGraw, is she the greatest coach of all time? I doubt it. She just won her first championship. There are now, I'm making a joke about that, but in all seriousness, if I was ever to do, in my personal opinion, if there was ever to be an interesting discussion to have in regards to college basketball, women's college basketball rather, it would have to be the discussion between Pat Summitt and Gino Auriemma as far as better coach. Their coaching styles are night and day. There were a lot of people, I've had friends who have played basketball, and they legit would say, I played, girls basketball in high school. I would love to have gone to Tennessee, but I couldn't take being yelled at like that by her. But you're going to get good coaching. Majority of the players, Shamika Holesclaw, Tamika Catchings, I can't think of her name that quick. They've all gone to the WNBA and made strides beyond belief. Michelle Snow, I believe, went there. I'm trying to remember. It's another girl that played that. I'm sitting here and I feel bad because I should know her name. Candace Parker. I'm back. These are all women who played for Tennessee and also played under Pat Summitt. And nothing to take away from Ariema. Ariema has produced great talent as well. Rebecca Lobo. They have a girl now who's playing for them who actually is from Richmond. So that is big news for me, and I'm not gonna lie, I love seeing stories like that. So we're gonna mosey away from college basketball and go into professional basketball because we are to say without saying, we're in the home stretch of the NBA. And I feel bad because I normally will get into this story and really tear it down and rip it apart as far as who has a chance, how the standards look, what can happen. So we're in a very tight spot right now. We're gonna look at the top of these conferences, but we're gonna break down the bottom first and then kind of see what happens. Detroit made a big acquisition as far as getting Blake Griffin. Blake Griffin has fit in pretty well with Detroit. They had won a couple of games starting out. They've hit that slump like most teams hit, which is expected. That's, completely fine. But now they're kind of on the outside looking in for a playoff spot. Miami has not solidified their spot, and they're tied with Milwaukee right now. Both teams have 5 games remaining. And that's kind of where we are with those. Like, both of those teams, actually, all 3 teams have 5 games remaining. Detroit is the bottom of it now. They're 37-40. So they would have to win out and hope that one of the teams above them loses, like, their remaining games to kind of have a chance of going ahead of them. Because that's like I said, it leaves you with the solid 5 games. We move up a little bit into the first 6 teams. Indiana has played pretty good basketball, to say the least. Indiana's probably the silent horse, but Indiana, you don't know what you're going to get because Miles Turner hasn't really been consistent. Washington just got John Wall back. Big help because his first game back he did notch a double-double, which is never a bad thing. Silent talk, but it's important. Philadelphia won 10 straight. Philadelphia has won 10 straight. And it's a benefit of Philadelphia winning 10 straight, especially with Ben Simmons averaging a triple-double during that stint, as well as he's notched 4 triple-doubles out of the 10 games. That's just something to kind of look at and put into play with what we're watching right now. Toronto's number 1. Excuse my French, it don't mean shit. Toronto has had number 1 seeds before and forgotten to play basketball. They could have a chance of running into Philadelphia in the second round. Keep an eye on that. You have Markelle Fultz coming back at full health. They said Embiid will not be out as long as they expected, but that's great news. That's phenomenal news for Philadelphia. So they're definitely going to, utilize that resource to its advantage, which I don't blame them at all. Boston is second. The injury is not 100%. We're just going to, I feel like no one wants to say it, but I'm going to go ahead and just be the bad guy. He's not 100%. He's going to likely get surgery during the offseason. His knees have been battling him all season. They've kind of just not said much about it, but it's been the talk of the game. And LeBron is in third. As with the Cleveland Cavaliers, you don't really pay attention to their seeding. You just pay attention to when the playoffs start and the 15-year veteran LeBron James starts to play. Kevin Love just came back. He's going to be very valuable to have. You're going to see Cleveland get into a unique position with their role players that they just picked up. George Hill, we really haven't seen. I'm just going to be honest. Jordan Clarkson is still getting time, and Rodney Hood is going to be a spot-up shooter. Kevin Love is going to be also a shooter to kind of help on the wing. And Tristan Thompson is really going to have to be very reliable on the block. It's that simple. Moving down to the West, first and foremost, before I continue, great April Fool's joke. Kind of knew it was an obvious April Fool's joke. Could have been Ass of the Week, but I'm not gonna. The Ass of the Week I had this week is just I really don't want to talk about that story, but I'm gonna talk about it because it was. We'll just leave it at that. But New Orleans, Anthony Davis basically was doing a prank of him cutting his unibrow. And it was presented like, okay, he cut his unibrow. We're going to change the branding for New Orleans. It's no longer going to be the brow. And they, did all of that. Well, it turned out, and I knew how it went. It was kind of obvious, but he did it before April Fool's. So it kind of just worked out to get the attention on the day before April Fool's, so that on April Fool's Day you could say, hey, it was a joke. But he was making as if he cut his unibrow. When he was in the process of doing so, he dropped his phone, and in the process of him dropping the phone, the editing was done well enough where it looked like he had the unibrow was cut, but in reality, he just put makeup over it. No problem, whatever, no big deal. They're currently in the 8th seed. I feel like they currently have 5 games remaining as well. They should be able to, they could possibly move up to a 5 or even a 4 seed. And I'm stretching saying that only because of the teams ahead of them have been on very hot streaks as well. Utah has been playing very trash in their division. I feel bad saying that, but it's just calling it like it is. And it looks like from the remainder of their schedule, because let's see, you have 3 teams. Played them 4 times, give or take. Well, yeah, they've already knocked off most of their division. I think they may have like 1 game remaining. Oklahoma City hasn't been able to win in their division, and I didn't talk about this in the other breakdown of the matchups. But Oklahoma City will secure a playoff seed. They would have to do something really stupid to get knocked out. Utah, like I said earlier, they're kind of in control of their own destiny. Minnesota is on that edge. They're 44-34. So they actually have 1 less game than the other teams. So they have 4 games remaining. Denver is on the outside looking in. The Clippers have a chance. They just have to wait and hope for teams losing in order for it to kind of balance out the way it does. Lakers, as we are following our trend, Lakers, Kings, Dallas, Memphis, and Phoenix. Goodbye. See you. So long. Farewell. And then in the East, before I forget, Charlotte, New York, Chicago, Brooklyn, Orlando, and Atlanta. It's been great. It's been real. Y'all have done y'all best. Good luck in the draft. Hopefully you get some great players because there are a pretty good amount of players coming out. Whoever gets the number 1 ping pong ball and gets DeAndre Ayton is getting a great big man. Just going to put it out there. Houston has the 1st seed sewn up. They are pretty much guaranteed home court. I was ready to say home field. Home court throughout the playoffs. So that means they'll have home court through the Western Conference. And if they're able to, because we need to acknowledge reality for what it is, if they're able to beat Golden State in a 4-game series, they will have home court against whoever they play in the Eastern Conference. Portland has secured their playoff spot. San Antonio is 4th. No one wants to hear this. I'm going to be the bad guy. I've talked about this before on the podcast. I'm going to say it again. Kawhi Leonard's not playing this season. There's no other way to put it. If he plays, it's mainly just to stay in shape. He's not going to be playing any basketball this season. He's trying to work on his contract, between his contract and or making a deal or finding a way to get out of San Antonio. I don't want to compare it to the Kyrie Irving situation, but I feel like it's deja vu. It's just a little bit different because he's in a stage or in a headspace about this whole thing that it makes it tough to kind of know where he's at or what he's trying to do. But he also, like anybody, you have to look out for yourself. So that's kind of what he's been doing. Portland being 3rd, I don't take it serious. Portland will be able to get out of the first round depending on who they play. The tough part is going to be, or the big question is going to be, who they meet in the second round. If they meet Golden State in the second round, Get your brooms out. It'll be a sweep. I didn't talk about this yet, and I want to wait until next week. I am in the finals in my fantasy league in basketball. As many of you know, my fantasy chronicles for football were just pure trash, hot garbage, whatever you want to call it. With the NBA, it was a little different. Been turning out some pretty good games, and I'm excited for that. So, have a chance I may win. I am going against actually one of the other moderators of my sports group that I'm in, A Space to Sport. If you want to get good, if you are on the run and you're trying to get sports information and you really need a source to just go to and just read stories, join. If you're on Facebook, go to and look up A Space to Sport. You will enjoy what you get as far as content. We are very balanced and transparent in what we share. So check it out. Went ahead and threw that shameless plug in there too. But yeah, the NBA is kind of going to be, until we get teams seeded, like solid seeded, you're just going to have a lot of fun coming up for the next few days. By next week, we should have our seedings. You'll be running into your playoff matchups. I'm going to do a projected list of who I feel may win each matchup. Some of them are probably going to be obvious and should be simple chalk, but a lot of it's going to be kind of how things play out. So now we're going to go to, I guess you can call it a quote-unquote feel-good story, but it's a unique story to happen the way it did, and it just kind of worked out in his favor. So Scott Brooks was put in a position that he would have never expected, where he went from a accountant to being a goalie. So he is a goalie for a minor league team, and they were able to get him into, well, I'll read the story because I don't want to tell it and then it doesn't come out anywhere near close to what I'm saying, because they kind of presented it a little bit on TV, but I was like, this is a cool and a chill, feel-good story. So we'll go ahead and jump right into it. The man burst from the lobby with breaking news, interrupting the celebration and hollering like Paul Revere. It was Thursday night at Johnny's Ice House East in Chicago, a few minutes after the over 40 men's league championship, as rink general manager Pete Johnson attempted to corral the winning team for pictures and a trophy presentation. The bombshells landed. Hey, come and check this out. They're putting Foster in. Fozzie's getting called in. The players rushed into the lobby, many still wearing full equipment and skates. If true, this was too good to miss. They clamored for views of the television, which was showing the third period of the Blackhawks-Jets game at the United Center, located less than a mile away. The man wasn't joking. There on the screen, sporting a number 90 jersey, below his familiar steel gray mask, was 36-year-old Scott Foster, adult league teammate, professional accountant, and now, thanks to an absurd confluence of fluky circumstances, NHL goalie for the Chicago Blackhawks. Pretty crazy, huh? Johnson says. Unreal. Except it actually happened. Foster actually played 14 minutes and 1 second, actually stopped 7 shots, actually secured a 6-2 victory. He actually heard the crowd chant his name over and over, and then actually received first star honors and a shimmering wrestling belt that the Blackhawks award in-house. Later, he conducted an actually hilarious post-game interview in which Foster was asked about Coach Joe Quinterville laughing upon his interest. He paused for a moment and nodded, I think I would too. To the boys back at Johnny's, this was all a riot. They know Foster as a mild-mannered stay-at-home netminder, a father of 2 young daughters who always hits the ice before anyone else to warm up. They know that he graduated in 2006 from Western Michigan University, where he played varsity hockey and for 4 years, but only started for 2, and that now he works at Globe Capital, mostly in corporate accounting. They did not know that he used to stuff hockey trading cards in his skates for good luck, though they are not surprised he is a goalie after all. He's good shit, says Mark Olson of the Foster's teammates with an elite league outfit called 200 by 85. Very humble, very respectful. It couldn't have happened to a better guy. I think that's half the reason the place was up for grabs. Indeed, the party funneled into the rink bar as the third period progressed, roars and toasts of Labatt accompanying each shot that Foster saved. A gimme against Tyler Myers less than a minute after replacing injured star Colin Delia. A wrister from Patrick Lane, a backhander from Andrew Kopp, a Dustin Byfuglian sizzler. At one point, Johnson sent out a text to TV play-by-play announcer and friend Pat Foley, which earned the Johnnies shout-out on live air. I'm pretty sure they might have ran out of alcohol last night, Olsen says. Normally we don't like spilling beer. In this case, it was damn well worth it. Only in hockey, I've been hearing that a lot, Johnson says, because where else can an equipment manager like Jorge Alves or a bar hopping journeyman like Alfie Moore actually live out a childhood fantasy? Most emergency goalies remain anonymous, munching popcorn in the press box and leaving with nothing but a free ticket, which is what Foster had done during his previous dozen or so trips to United Center, until he received word that Anton Forsberg had been hurt during warm-ups and the Blackhawks needed Foster to dress, until he received word that Delia went down and he needed to play. So there's a couple more paragraphs of that, but mainly, long story short, he's an accountant. Like, his day job is an accountant, and he plays hockey from time to time, but he actually was given an opportunity to play in a hockey game. Now, he wasn't starting, but it's a feel-good story strictly because of the fact that he was coming in. He literally was not expected to play at all. It's a weird coincidence that one of the main guys ended up, like, their first goalie, he goes down in practice. You're talking about practice, not a game. No, I'm just kidding. We talking about practice though. And like the warm-ups before the game starts. Then during the game, the second string goalie goes down. So then we're in like a goalie / QB type situation where it's like, oh, we got to go to our third string. Bam. He's ready to go. And like he said, goalies are typically expected just to kind of hang out and chill because you really aren't going to be needed because the average goalie plays an entire game. There's very few instances that a goalie doesn't play a whole game. So with one being injured during warm-up, one being injured during game, enter this individual, and here we are. And it did make news, and it's a feel-good story, and I wanted to share that with you all to kind of lighten the mood a little bit in the hockey world, because I know usually I don't do many hockey stories, so props to me. Today's a fun day. We've done hockey, we've done women's basketball. Now we're gonna swing back to basketball, but we're gonna swing back to basketball in a different light. The McDonald's All-American game was played last week, and I don't really know how to put this. There were a lot of interesting / feel-good stories from the All-Star game, or from the All-American game. Zion Williamson did get hurt in a play against while playing defense against Nazir Little, who actually won the MVP of the night. Nazir actually scored 28 points on 12 of 17 shooting. He played a pretty good basketball game. He actually was shooting. I mean, he's gonna bring a lot to North Carolina. I will admit that. I hope he's not a one and done, but him going to North Carolina, likely he won't be, and that's okay. RJ Barrett, I mean, what do you expect? RJ Barrett is the number one recruit of this class, and he did not disappoint at all. I want to see because there were a couple guys who made noise that looked good, and there was a story that broke after the game where one of the kids decided, I think it's Darius Basley. Darius Basley was initially committed to Syracuse. He was going to go to Syracuse. He was on board, no problem. He took a different approach that will be a spark of conversation, and we're going to talk about this briefly, and then I'll go into the rest of the All-Americans who played. he decided, of course, as per the NBA rules, you are not able to go into the NBA straight out of high school. So he chose to go to the G League. So he's going to play in the G League next year. And I'm going to gather he has to play there for at least a year because you have to be out of high school. You have to be 1 year removed from high school before you can commit or be eligible for the NBA draft. So I'm wondering in my mind, will he have to still do the NBA draft? Or does he have the opportunity or the ability to be called up from a G League team if he plays good? I think for him, he's trying to get the money. He's trying to, as most people, as the term has been used and as you hear it from time to time, he's trying to get to the bag. I don't have any knock against that. My only knock and my only question about it is he really going to fit the mold and will he succeed in the height that he brings in coming to the G League? Because he really wasn't like a top recruit. And I mean, he's a top recruit, I'm assuming, but I didn't hear his name much during, like we're in an era now where a lot of players are measured strictly on the basis of how often we see their highlight reels on YouTube. Didn't see any of his. Devon Dotson had a pretty good game. I've seen a few videos of him going to Kansas. Trey Jones, he's the younger brother of Tyus Jones, so we're gonna hear about him a lot. I have a hunch he's gonna leave after 1 year. It's a tough position for him because he's short, so I don't know. Zion, we know is gone. There's no question about it. RJ Barrett, I see leaving after a year. Romeo Langford had not committed yet as of at the time of the All-American game. Keldon Johnson, who came from Oak Hill, he had a pretty good game. He scored, he had a few scores here and there, but his impact in the game was that he was able to shut down RJ Barrett in one of the key plays near the end of the game. One player we didn't get to see, well, before I get into that, Cam Reddish had a solid game. He really didn't do a lot, but he was there. Quentin Grimes, we didn't really hear much from him. Nazarian Reed is going to be good for LSU. I see him staying for 2 or 3 years. He's not a one and done. If he goes to the NBA, I'm not going to say he's going to get exposed, but it'll just kind of be what it is. Javon Quinterly, who's going to be going to Villanova. The Jelly Fam finger roll layup lifestyle, that's going to change if he goes to he may still do it when he gets to Villanova to get that exposure, but in all reality and in hindsight, Villanova, this goes back to what we talked about earlier. You're gonna be pushed and considered as you're gonna stay here for a while. Because he was going to Arizona, but then after all the Arizona exposure came out, he left and changed his mind and went to Villanova. So I'm okay with it. Because you got to look at it almost as similar to the Isaiah Washington story for Minnesota. Because Isaiah Washington didn't. I think he was in the All-American game, but we really didn't see much of him. And he's at Minnesota. His first year was a solid freshman year, but he's staying. Let's see. Emmanuel quickly didn't really have much of a big game. Kobe White was kind of quiet, and they gave an incomplete to 2 guys who didn't play. Simusula Shatu didn't play due to an ACL tear, and Bobo didn't play because he was trying to nurse an ankle injury. He didn't. They were trying to have him be out for that game because they were preparing him for their actual high school tournament game that was, I think, the next day. So that worked out pretty good. $1 million question for me that I always look at is it would have been good if Sharif had an opportunity to play, but we, can't go back. I'm looking forward to seeing him at UCLA. I feel like he's going to be a one and done by far. Talking about most of the guys on this list that I can recall or think of. Let's see, Reggie Perry Reggie Perry had a good game. I mean, he had 15 points and 7 boards. He's going to Mississippi State. I feel like he will probably be doing. He's probably going to do similar to what Malik Newman did. Well, he'll be in Mississippi State. He might sit out a year and go to another school. Because Malik Newman going to Kansas helped him. I hope Malik stays another year, though. That's just me. So that's all I have on sports. We have hit an hour mark. These next few stories, I have a few, but I don't want to. It's not gonna be anything like too heavy weighted. But I'm gonna, try to get into everything that's been going on in the stuff world. So if you were here for the sports, I appreciate you being here. Tech is not your world. I understand, but this is where we kind of get into our little nerdy and geeky stuff and give a little bit of music, talk, and I have a crazy story that I'm still... It almost caused me to deactivate Facebook. I'll put it like that. And I'll get into that in a moment. So the first story we have, and this story actually just broke today. So I'm glad that it did happen and I was able to kind of get to it as quick as I did. A new streaming service has decided to go live. And they are, when I say go live, that means they're officially getting an IPO and they're going to be involved in stock. And that is Spotify. Before I read the story, because I believe it will probably be said, and this is a blind read for me, so y'all know how I do. But they have, Spotify is starting to take on a new leaf with podcasts, companies, and I'm going to share this because I talked about this before, and I always make sure I'm fair in talking about or addressing this on my show. Podcasts at one time were nowhere near close to the way they are now. When you heard people talk about podcasts, it was like, what's a podcast? Why is somebody go sit and listen to somebody talk about something all day long? Here it is now, about 5 or 10 years later, and podcasts are the new thing. As many of you all know, I blog and I still keep my blog and maintain it. My twin, she's the blogaholic. She's been grinding on her blog. Blogging for me is something that I still will do to, get the blood flowing or get the writing juices flowing. But podcasting has become like my niche, and I never would have expected it. But I'm sharing all of that and saying it because Spotify is now giving that option to upload or get your podcast to be available through their site. And that's huge because if you look at most of the major companies, like I said, Spreaker is the source to load and store podcasts. But sites such as TuneIn, Stitcher, now Spotify, Podcast itself, Podcast Addict, there are different apps, and I'm gonna be the stickler and the guy to go there and saying this because I feel like it needs to be addressed. We're in an era and we're at a stage where you want to make sure your show or your presentation is accessible through more than one source. Because not everybody has an iPhone. Not everybody has an Android. Hell, not everybody has a smartphone. So you want to be sure that you're giving people that other medium of listening to a show. Because I've had it be brought to my attention and I've come clean in saying it. Doing a podcast to get on iTunes is not going to be the only end result that you want to go for, because not everybody has an iPhone, an iPhone. Not everybody has an iPhone, or not everybody has that form of any Apple devices. Period. Let alone a Mac. So you want to make sure that you have those other options. Spotify is an alternative option. That's why I'm sharing that. I know that was a long tangent, but we're gonna hop right into it. Spotify, the world's largest music streaming services, has made its debut on the New York stock market this morning with its reference price initially set at $132 a share and trades opening at $165.90. That puts the company value at $29.5 billion, higher than what CNBC reported last month when shares were traded on private markets were as much as $132.50 a share. Spotify's last valuation was at $8.4 billion when it raised financing round of $400 million back into 2015. Sweden-based Spotify is available in 61 countries with an overall user base that includes ad-supported free listeners of 159 million and 70 million paying users as of January 2018. The company was founded in 2006 by Martin Lorentzen and Daniel Ek, who remains the current CEO. For its public offering, Spotify has taken an unconventional and somewhat risky approach called direct listing, a route normally taken by small cap companies, usually in biotech and life sciences. It's a less expensive alternative to an IPO where the business sells shares directly to the public without any intermediaries, but it also means drawbacks like no deal support from the bankers. Eck explained this position in a company blog post published yesterday. Spotify is not raising capital, and our shareholders and employees have been free to buy and sell our stock for years, he wrote. So while tomorrow puts us on a bigger stage, it doesn't change who we are, what we're about, or how we operate. Spotify is the biggest company to ever go public via direct listing and the first one on the New York Stock Exchange. Spotify's IPO paperwork showed that it is going through a tremendous amount of cash, posting revenue last year of 4,090 million euro or nearly 5 billion and a net loss of around 1.5 billion for the same period. But its gross margin is growing thanks to newly negotiated licenses with the major labels. These deals not only reduce Spotify's royalty payouts, but will allow the company to predict their music costs for several years. However, there are obstacles for Spotify to dodge as it continues to grow. Recently, it had to crack down on users running modded versions of the app to stream music for free while blocking ads. Spotify's IPO filing notes that about 2 million users are getting around ads on Spotify without paying, or about 2.3% of all free Spotify accounts. It also has some odd lawsuits still lingering around, like the one filed by Wix and Publishing over mechanical licenses to the tune of $1.6 billion. Despite this, it's impossible to deny Spotify's success over the years as one of the earliest and most promising musical streaming businesses. Its closest competitor, Apple Music, only has 36 million paid subscribers, although that number might surpass Spotify by this summer. But even if that's the case, Spotify is predicting that it will be just fine in 2018 by continuing to focus on its central revenue stream of user subscription. The company is predicting as many as 96 million paid subscribers and a 30% increase in revenue to $6.6 billion by year's end. Bumping up subscriptions alone likely won't fix the catch-22 of Spotify's business model, where the more money it makes, the more money it pays out to the labels. It needs to find additional revenue streams or continue to work on reducing label payouts. The latter is a tough task. Trying to appease everyone when no one is satisfied is not an inviable position for Spotify, but it's one they're currently in. Artists are already only making fractions of a cent per stream on the platform, less than Apple Music, but considerably more than YouTube. And labels are still slow to change old habits and recognize the new modern market of music consumption. This doesn't leave Spotify without options. It could give the labels greater equity, for example. Ultimately, how successful Spotify's public offering is will depend on whether investors believe there is a light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to profitability and how sustainable its business model is. Not just for its own bottom dollar, but for the artists that are its lifeblood. All right. So, they didn't say anything about the podcasting, and that's understandable because it is kind of like an announcement that was made, but also they want you to kind of do research on your own to find it and how to get your podcast through Spotify. Now, if we go back a couple of months ago, this might be a year ago, I probably mistyped timing my dates or moments. When Snapchat made its change, that generated changes with the business when they went live, Spotify is doing the same thing. And I'm going to talk about this because we're in an era where a lot of companies, this is how they do business. Or this is how people do business. Think of Pandora. Think of owning an Android device. Think of being able to get access to a program without having to subscribe to that program. Spotify is running into that same brick wall, or has run into that same brick wall. If enough people are doing that, that's money that Spotify misses out on. Spotify has to be strict in what they present, but it's also the spin of, if people are going to do what they're going to do, it's not on the, and it's almost not to be rude saying it as you can't stop people from doing what they want to do. You can, but it's technology. There's always workarounds. Spotify now has to focus on ways of making money, not losing money. With us watching what has happened with a lot of big companies, don't want to use them as an example, but it's a tie-in. I'm not sure if Toys R Us was public or not. But Toys R Us, it's like you gotta change with the times. And something that's brought up in this article, which we fail to realize, is people don't physically buy music anymore. And this is even down to buying digital music. I'm talking about this on a tech level, not just with Spotify, but with just gadgets as a whole. I owned an Xbox. I was backwards. I would rather buy the game, physically own it, and if I don't want it, I can take it back, or I can sell it to someone, or I can do whatever I feel the need to do with the game. A streaming service puts you in a subscription. Subscriptions can be good, but subscriptions can be frustrating. But you also have those who will go that mile and buy games digitally. Buying games digitally is equivalent to buying music digitally. When I first joined Apple Music, or when I first got Apple period, I was buying CDs through like digital, because that way I have my own copy of it. The amount that's being spent on buying certain albums, you come out better just streaming the album itself. That's where we are. That's how Spotify is able to kind of keep its head above water over what Apple does. Apple's playlists are going to be what Apple's playlists are. Spotify's playlists are going to be what Spotify's playlists are. You have to know that and understand that as a listener and as just a knowledge base of just the community involving those things. I say all of that, and I'm giving all that information to share that this is going to be huge for Spotify. I know that's probably going to not surprise. That probably won't surprise many people, me saying that, but Spotify going live is huge, or getting an IPO. Their shares, having their rate, and what we also have to remember or realize, the shares have always been there. They just never made it a public share. Doing your shares within your businesses do that all the time. Major companies do that all the time. It's when it becomes live and it's available for others to buy shares. Because buying shares and then how the business goes kind of impacts what the next steps are for the business. That's the easiest way I can put it. And I know it's like number talk flying all over the place, but Spotify is in a good place to do this. We, as with anything, the first couple of months are going to be rocky, especially with just going live. Like they literally went live this morning because remember, anyone who knows stocks, the stock market's open at 9. It's legit like a 9 to 5. They open at 9 and then at 5 o'clock, shut it down, we done. And that's it. So that's where we're at with Spotify and their announcement. I did talk briefly as far as with Apple and Androids and things of that nature was coming down the pike. But many people may or may not know. And before I give this story, I want to make sure I give all of the stories because it's key to those of my techies who have items. Apple just made a wave of updates. If you have an iPhone, if you have a newer iPhone, an iPad, I believe iPads 4 and higher. So iPad 4, iPad Pro, iPad Air, the newest iPad that just came out. If you just got one, props to you for that, obviously. The Mac and the Apple Watch. If you have any of those devices, there are new updates. On your Mac, there's going to be an update to your OS. To the Apple Watch, I believe it's at 4.3. And the iPhones or Apple devices, mobile devices, are at 11.3 officially. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about what we will be looking at related to the new iOS updates. So in the iOS update 11.3 and Mac OS 10.13.5, which I just addressed, Apple has introduced a new data and privacy feature where users can get a better understanding of how their data is used. Now, whenever Apple asks for access to information to enable certain features or experiences, a privacy icon will appear, which is two blue silhouettes shaking hands, along with detailed privacy info for those who want to learn about what's being done with their data. One of the major fallouts from Facebook's Cambridge Analytica scandal is that everyone is now suddenly aware of how much data Facebook and similar apps and sites collect about you. Since Apple has often been critical of these practices, it seems fitting that it's brought that philosophy to its latest iOS update as well. According to Apple, this privacy feature has been in the works for months, mostly in response to EU's new General Data Protection Regulation that is in effect starting May the 25th. Apple also said that you won't see this icon and information pop up with every new feature. It's just when Apple needs your information to enable services and personalization. In addition to the privacy icon, Apple will also start providing privacy management tools in compliance with the new GDPR ruling. Starting in May, you will be able to get a copy of your data, request a correction to your data, deactivate your account, as well as delete your account entirely. So this is Apple kind of taking that first step in knowing when companies have data, anytime companies or businesses have a data breach, by nature, by default, other companies want to make sure they cover themselves. Because Facebook having that data breach may not seem like a lot if you don't have a Facebook account. Because a lot of people say, well, I don't have Facebook, I don't use Facebook. That's fine. That's understandable. I won't disagree, won't knock it. The flip side of it, though, is if you have used Facebook and there was information that may have been up there, and we sometimes forget this, and I'm going to say this because this is probably going to be one of my tech pet peeves. Facebook tells you that you could deactivate your page. Deactivating your page does not mean that it's closed and that you never have to use Facebook again. The only way that you would permanently not be available on Facebook is you'd have to legit shut down the Facebook page to not be accessible and available. Like you would have to be making a new account. What most people do is, and this is where Facebook where Facebook phases come up, where people are like, I'm taking a break from Facebook. I don't need this. I don't want to deal with this anymore. I'm just gonna walk away from Facebook. It happens. Shit goes down. I get it. I've done it. I've taken those breaks, but it's never been like a public service announcement for me. I just get away from Facebook. But you leave. Once you sign back in, you're back on Facebook. No other way to put it. There's not really a pretty or dainty way of doing that. So they're trying to make sure that any data that's out there, and it's not just with Facebook, just with any other company, because we as people don't realize we enter so much of our personal data onto computers. Your name, your address, your phone number, your social, your jobs. This information is out there. It's a matter of how secure or how well you maintain that information not being pulled or accessed for future reference. And that's something that as a consumer and as a person, we just have to remember and take into account. So this iOS will be helping that feature. Now, mind you, this is for Mac and for iOS Apple devices. This is not going to apply with a watch because there's nothing really watch related that would be impacted by that. But all of your devices you will want to make sure you get the update. One final thing, because I want to make sure I remember this before I forget. If you try to update the Apple Watch before updating your iOS devices, you are going to get a message that will say, we cannot update your watch until you put the latest version of the iOS on your mobile device. So if you're using your iPhone and you try to update your Apple Watch, you're going to get that message. So the best thing to do is update your Apple Watch first. What I normally do is I go ahead and allocate a couple of minutes between my Apple Watch, my iPhone, my iPod, not my iPod because my iPod is outdated. My Apple Watch, my iPhone, my iPad, and my Mac. If it's an update that's going to hit all of them, update everything. Do it at home. Do it on your Wi-Fi. That way you don't have to wait for lag delays. Also, with your watch, you always are going to be told that it has to be at least 50% charged, preferably on the charger, because that way you don't have any issues where the update tries to go through and it doesn't, and then you get a corrupted update on your device. So think about those things before you make the next update to your selected device. All right. I've done pretty good. I haven't passed out yet. Quick story from Snapchat, because like I said, we just talked about a previous company who did their IPO and went public. Snapchat Snap rather, the parent company of Snapchat, is undergoing yet another round of layoffs. This time the cuts are focused in its advertising department. Variety confirmed with Snap that the company is laying off around 100 workers. Snap confirmed to Engadget that the layoffs have taken place. This is the third round of layoffs for Snap in a year that's only 3 months old. People who had inside knowledge of the issues say that this is the last round of cuts associated with a restructuring plan that was put into place last year. The company previously let go staff from the engineering and content teams. These changes reflect our view that the tighter integration and closer collaboration between our teams is a critical component of sustainability, growing in our business. Chief Strategy Officer Imran Khan said in a statement to Bloomberg, "While the process has required us to make some really tough decisions, we believe that rigorously ensuring our team structure will always align with our goals. Okay, can I just not speak English? While this process has required us to make some really tough decisions, we believe that rigorously ensuring our team structure always aligns with our goals will make us stronger. Snap has had its failure of troubles over the last year. The company has been losing ground to its rival, Instagram, and it's unclear how successful its original content has been. However, its fourth quarter was its best since launching an IPO in March of last year, which I said it was a couple months of last year, I don't remember. So that was a refresher. So this reorganization may end up working out in the medium term. So that being the case, and this is all right. And I'm trying to see how I can talk about this, but this is kind of a cool yet a simple topic. And if anyone knows social media, this is where we've reached, or the point we've reached with social media. And think about it. Some people have Snapchat just to use the filters to post information to Instagram. Some people use Instagram's filters and posts to post, or they post videos or stories from their Insta story over to Snapchat. When Snapchat introduced the update that you no longer get the black background, or it's not boxed off, you can just kind of view a video, we kind of knew where this was going. And it's crazy because last night, I guess you can call it was a resurrection. I remembered that I have Snapchat, so I started using mine again. And I posted, because I was posting a couple videos on Instagram or Insta Story, whatever. And I'll come clean and I'll say this because I feel like Instagram went through the same ordeal. Instagram lost a lot of its love due to the algorithm change. Snapchat lost a lot of its love due to the format change as far as how to view other people's stories, let alone view your own. Like, viewing your own stories on Snapchat is a piece of work. Like, it's no longer, okay, let me play my video and just play it through. Nah, you legit have to sacrifice your firstborn to do it. And I'm being very analytical in saying it that way, but the truth is it's a more in-depth and thorough process than what it used to be. So now we're just at that point with Snapchat. Snapchat's making changes for their business. They're getting rid of people. There's not much marketing that Snapchat has to do anymore. Snapchat can kind of market itself. Because at the end of the day, I mean, at the most, you have to, like, a business has to do what it can to make it to top, what you want to be, to top social, like top downloads or top apps, free apps, paid apps, whatever. They have to go through that channel or through that process. And now with us being in an age where most people don't want to use the main program because they're like, I don't really like the interface. Let me use this third-party program that may do what I want it to do much better and much more cleaner and condensed than this company. So that's where Snapchat is. And Snapchat's not going anywhere. I mean, I think people have to remember that. And then too, like I said, a year ago, they literally just did their IPO. So they're live as well. And I mean, they made business changes. And it's ironic, since the new update, I rarely, if at all, even want to look at any of the stories that are not related to my friends who I follow on Snapchat. So, excuse me, there's that part as well. All right. Now our artist spotlight. And this is one of the few times of many that I will be doing a artist spotlight on someone that some people may know, but some people will probably be like, who is that? So, I'm not going to really give you too much extracurricular about it. I'm just kind of going to go into his story and just kind of give my backstory about my listening. Today's artist spotlight is Cyhi the Prince, and it's Cyhi the Prince. Telling stories of the streets through vivid rhymes and tricky metaphors. Cyhi the Prince is a rapper signed with Kanye West's label Good Music. Born Sidell Young in Stone Mountain, Georgia, Cyhi was inspired to take his name when he learned he was born the same day, same year, and had the same middle name as Prince Harry. After releasing a handful of mixtapes, he was discovered by Kanye West in 2010. That same year, he signed with West's Good Music imprint, appeared on West's album My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and released the mixtape Royal Flush. Royal Flush 2 then arrived in 2011, while 2012 saw him land on the GOOD Good Music compilation Cruel Summer. In 2003, he earned numerous co-writing credits on West's album Yeezus. Then in 2014, Good Music released Black History Project, his conceptual mixtape, which honored African American history with tracks like Huey, Coretta, and Basquiat. A second volume titled NAACP followed in 2015. The Stoned Mountain Playlist, a brief collaboration with publicist producer Jonathan Hay, appeared in 2016. Cyhi's long-delayed debut studio album, No Dope on Sundays, finally appeared in November of 2017, featuring appearances by West, Pusha T, 2 Chainz, Estelle, and many others. I share him as an artist spotlight because there are very few times that you hear of an album that gets your attention and you like it and you listen to it and you're like, okay, this isn't too bad. But this one was one that I really was introduced to. So I was, I'm honest about it. I have a friend of mine who is a music snob. She listens to a lot of music and she performs music. So she mentioned this artist and I kind of said, okay, sure, I'll check it out. Never did. Listened to a Joe Budden podcast. He mentioned Cyhi, the Prince. I'm like, okay, cool. Song I heard, I was impressed. So I listened to the album and I was like, oh, this is actually not a bad album. And I've been locked in ever since. So I played his music. I play his music from time to time. I haven't consistently been playing a lot lately. I will admit that one of my newest, to kind of give a music, and so this is kind of artist spotlight, but music spin. I found a playlist on Apple Music that is 9 hours long. It is disco. And when I say disco, it takes you every direction from Grab This Disco Ball to I Get Lifted by the Bee Gees to I can't even think of it. It's songs on it that I just have not heard in a while that literally came out before I was born. I'm wanting to almost inquire or assume that there's a song on there that I grew up in awe of. It was called This Time Baby, I think. And it's just one of those it's one of those albums that I legit enjoy and can give the opportunity of just vibing out to, because you really don't get many albums that give you that true listen, or a playlist that can really give you that true listen. And this album is one of them. Like, it legit, there's one song on here called Make, and it was, like I said, this is a 9-hour playlist and I'm not even sure if I'm like even in the trenches of how intense it is. There's a song on here called Make That Feeling Come Again. It's 11 minutes long and it's one of the most relaxing tracks that I've listened to. And I listen, like I said, anyone who knows me knows I listen to music just as much as the next person. There's one song that they did, I'm not gonna play it too long because I want to get hit with copyright. But it's a song called Relight My Fire by Dan Hartman. I've been trying to find this song and it popped up in my head at a random point of the night because music doesn't cut off for me. And I listened to the song and I was like, okay, let me look up some Apple Music, playlist. And I found that disco playlist. So if you're looking, just look up the song Relight My Fire. Go to playlist. It's going to be disco, make sure I get the correct name. Disco Deep Cuts. And it is 9 hours and 3 minutes of just a true musical session. And I'm not even 2/3 of the way through it. That's how much music I've listened to. So if you have a chance, definitely listen to it. I would highly recommend it. But do listen to Cyhi, the Prince. He's an up and coming artist under Kanye's record label. All right. I'm really gonna say this because I need to. This story, literally, I didn't read the story, I just watched the video. It caused me to practically deactivate Facebook, like permanently, and I know we talked about it earlier, like, well, you can't deactivate, you just said you can, and you're right, I can't. But it caused me to truly, between taking a break from Facebook, shutting down my Facebook page, recollecting thought, all of it crossed my mind. And what's tough for me now with being in a social media state, as far as like my podcast, my blog, branding personally, just things that I'm trying to work on, it's tough to do that when you have something that you're trying to like get, find out about. So I'm just going to go ahead and read the story. I'm not going to play the video. Before I continue the story, because I do want to share this, because this is very key. There's a video that's in the article that I have. It is very graphic. if you have children, or if you do not have a strong stomach, or if you just don't like to see certain things that can be uncomfortable, however you want to pin it or term it, don't watch the video. I don't like, I've worked in a hospital, so things don't really have a major bother to me. But even beyond that, just watching this was like, all right, I'm done. Goodbye. Facebook, I'm out. I was really ready to just like, I need to do something. And I think I segued into something else random because I just had to. So the title of the blog of the story is from the Independent. It is based in UK, but the story did happen here in the US. Man was shot in the head on Facebook Live by a woman playing with a loaded gun. Devin Holmes was left fighting for his life after the incident in Houston Patrol Station. A man is fighting for his life after being shot in the head by a woman who was playing with a loaded gun while live on Facebook. Footage of the incident, which shows the moment Devin Holmes was shot in the early hours of Sunday morning, has been viewed thousands of times on social media. Cassandra Damper, 25, was arrested following a shooting at a patrol station in Houston, Texas. The Facebook Live broadcast shows a man in the back of a vehicle. Shows a man in the back of a vehicle place a handgun between Mr. Holmes and a woman, who police say is Miss Damper, both sitting in the front. The woman picks up the gun and points it towards the camera. "You're making me nervous," Mr. Holmes says as he grabs her hand. The man in the back says, "She ain't got no cut, blood," before the woman tells Mr. Holmes, "Say something, bitch," and pulls the trigger, shooting the 26-year-old father in the head. The footage ends with the woman and the man in the back fleeing the car as Mr. Holmes, who has blood pouring onto his shirt, struggles to breathe. Miss Damper has been charged with tampering or fabricating evidence after police said she tried to wipe gun residue that may have been on her hands. She told police she thought the weapon was unloaded, according to Click to Houston. Authorities said a grand jury will decide if any further charges should be brought in the case. Mr. Holmes is on life support in Ben Taub Hospital in Houston. Prayers and condolences to his family in dealing with this. He's recovering now, but just the immediate story when it broke, I literally was like, okay, this is going to be a huge impact on him as far as after it, if he comes out of it and there's no huge like effect on him as a whole, he's going to definitely have an experience with this. I'm just trying my hardest to like not break down even thinking about it now, because it's just such a horrible story. Number one, and I'm going to say this to any of my friends who do or choose to and need to realize this because of the relevance. And I'm even going to say this based on like Instagram. I've done it a couple of times, but it's to be silly. Facebook Live has to stop. And when I say it has to stop based on people sharing things that should not be shared. This did not need to be a Facebook Live story. Now, on opposite side of it, if we didn't have the story or we didn't have this video recorded, there would be no footage proving what happened. The aftermath and the fact that she was dumb enough to try to get her fingerprints off of the gun, you can't be like, come on. Like, if anything, and this is, I'm just, like I said, I'm in my headspace about this because things like this, I will never understand. In that circumstance or in that situation, regardless of if you did it or did not do it, or if you know you did it and you are worried about being charged or whatever the case may be, call the police. Because if you leave it in someone else's hands of it being done and then trying to like hide your phone or get rid of the evidence, it's like getting rid of something and not thinking that you never know who may or may not see it. It's not worth it. here it is. I mean, she got the initial charges. Great, cool, no problem, whatever. Where I'm concerned and how I'm looking at it is, what could she actually get charged for? Because that almost can be looked at as possibly as being attempted murder. And I'm not, first and foremost, I'm not a prosecutor. I'm not judge, civil trial, none of that. I'm just giving general thoughts and talking about this story as a whole. Because you're sitting there and I've still not even hit the main point that I really want to say. Why is someone carrying a gun, playing with a gun on a live video? Like, whether it was or was not loaded, that was just no. Some people who have shared or looked at it are stating it's a setup. We don't know anything. It could be. Even if it was or was not, you have to think properly in making decisions. That was a dumb decision. I've made some of the most idiotic decisions in my life. One of them, by far, is one of the dumbest one. One out of all the decisions I made, the one that I'm definitely gonna make sure I don't make as a dumb decision is playing with a gun. Whether you think the gun loaded or not, and you gonna aim it, no. It is not even. It's not that serious. It's just not. That's my main point that I want to get across in this podcast. But I also want to say to anyone, make your decisions and do things with the right mindset. Whether it's planned, whether it's serious, whatever the case may be. Be considerate of the full outcome because you really don't know what can happen. That's my main topic or main talk that I wanted to share with you all today. I'm not. This really isn't the way I want to end, especially on this form of a somber note. But we're at the end of the show. I appreciate everyone for checking out the shows, listening to the podcast, giving feedback, sharing shows, emailing, getting subscriptions. I love it. I'm very humble and very thankful for it. If I never say it enough. The show will be uploaded. It'll likely be up by about 8 or 9 tonight. I'll have it all squared away on Eastern time. Tomorrow's show, you will definitely want to tune in. That's all I'm gonna tell you. I got a great show on standby for tomorrow that I definitely am going to talk about. I'm not going to give too much of it now because I've been prepping and thinking about it because it's been kind of my sanity and my help of getting through things these past couple of months and especially these past couple of weeks. So that's what I'm going to leave y'all with today. As always, thank you for tuning in. I'm going to get this show edited, marked, set up, knocked out, do what I do because y'all know how it go. Take it easy. Y'all have a great evening, great day, positive vibes, do the right thing, keep your head in the right place, and you'll get through whatever's ahead. On that note, take care. Peace. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to get any information specifically based on the shows, you can go to Spreaker.com/BriTapePodcast or go to www.passpodcast.com. On both of those options, you do have the information related to what topics were talked about, the timestamps for the episode, as well as the specific links related to that specific story. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, the Pass signing out.
でもそんなんじゃダメ